Hey everybody, coming at you from out in the wilderness. Ooh, you're a woodpecker. We had about a 10 or 15 degree drop in temperatures, and a little bit of rain, so I'm going to take advantage of it by hopping out here and making an outdoors video. Now, there's a notch called the butterfly notch, and it's hard to believe there's really not that much information out there about it, and it's actually one of the handiest notches there is, whether you're a bushcrafter or a survivalist, because bushcrafters and survivalists, they like to build shelters, they like to build shelter frames, they like to build cross member sawhorses for sawing wood, they like to build teepees, they like to build cooking structures. Well, most people will tie everything together with paracord or bankline. But if you want to dive deeper into bushcraft, then you get away from cordage and you start making notches, putting everything together with notches. So we're going to dive into the world of how to make a butterfly notch and how it works. And like I say, it can be used for a shelter frame, it can be used for a cooking frame, it could be used for like an X for sawhorses for sawing firewood. The uses are endless. But it takes a saw, and sometimes a machete, sometimes a hatchet, sometimes a knife, but you got to have a saw. So let's dump this pack down and go find some wood for our butterfly notch. Alright, first thing you need is a saw, and we're going to make like a shelter frame, because I think that's the best use of the butterfly notch. You need kind of a clear area. We got a decent cleared out area right here, we've got room to move around. And then I'm going to go find a couple of logs. There was some trees down by the trail that was knocked over, and I think I'm going to get them. Alright, now just to make things easier before you get started, you kind of want to remove a little bit of the bark here. And if you're actually going to make a shelter frame, it's a good idea to remove all the bark and the little sticks and things to keep from poking a hole in your tarp. Unless it is a survival shelter, and then you'll be using greenery. So I'm just going to do the top half of these two. Alright, so the first thing that you want to do is you're going to do two 45-degree cuts, and you're going to try to go about half the depth of the log. Alright, so say somewhere towards the top. So you want to kind of eyeball a 45 as best as you can. You want it to fit good and tight, because if it doesn't fit good and tight, you're going to have to make little wedges for it. You want the saw to go as straight down as possible. And I'm going at kind of an angle, which is bad. You really got to saw a bunch of these and be in good practice. Alright, I got one done, so what I'm going to do now is come over here and do the other one. Alright, so sometimes this turns out beautiful and sometimes it turns out horrible. What I like to do is I put my thumb on the end of the cut, and then that on the other end of the cut, so that I'll know that the cuts are ending parallel with the ground. That way I'll know right where the center is. It's going to be right in the center of the log. Now not only are you 45 to this, but you want to look at your previous cut and you want to be 90 degrees to it. And you want to hold your saw parallel to the ground since you're holding this parallel. Alright, you want to roll it over and make sure that your cuts are pretty parallel. And they are. But this is wider than this one. So that could be a problem. But once you do these, you're going to understand that this ain't exactly the easiest thing in the world to do. So what you want to do now is put your machete, or if you got a hatchet, right on there. And you want to get rid of that. Just like that. Let's see. I'm going to cut a little bit more out of here. I'm probably going to have to saw a little bit deeper on that other one. Yeah. And then you flip it over. You want to do this side. Put it right at the edge and beat it towards you. Just like that. Alright, now we are not, this is a little bit bigger than this one, but we're going to wait until we get the other one done to kind of trim this up a little bit. You want to kind of, instead of beating on the back of the machete and driving it straight in, you want to put it forward and beat it towards you. Now when that won't come out, that's when you take the saw and you saw it a little bit more. Then you can take your knife, you can even push that in there and get some of that out. Kind of clean that up a little bit. Just like that. Alright, now we're going to stop right there. That's what we've got so far. Put my knife up. That's what we got so far. Now I'm going to do another one and then we're going to try to beat them together. Alright, looks pretty level to me. So now, let's take this and baton into this. And baton into this. You can do this with a machete or a hatchet, whatever you have available. Some people put it in the middle and beat straight in. But I put it on the very edge and I beat it forward just like that. Now that is a good clean butterfly notch. That's the way it should look. Alright, now the next thing you want to do before you assemble it, you got to be careful because you could ruin it right here. But what you want to do is you want to cut a flat. You want to cut a flat right across the top. Just like that. Now you want to do this bottom one without damaging the wood. Alright. So now you've got about maybe an inch exposed right here. So let's take this other one. Let's do it. Once you get that depth right there, then you can just cut straight through to the bottom one. Alright, now I'll show you how you beat them together. I'll get you down low for that. Alright, so what you want to do, this is where you may have to do a little carving here and there and a little more sawing if it don't fit. But You want to set these, and you want to kind of eyeball the width here. Look at that, I don't even have to eyeball it. That thing fell straight together. All right. So, I put a knee on here. And drive it home. And then you want to see, yep, if you can pick up the top side and it's locked in, you're good to go. This is going to be a messy operation because I'm hand holding the camera. I'm going to try to be steady, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and get you kind of a decent shot as I pick this thing up. Alright, so there it is, laying on the ground. And I'm going to pick it up. And as you can see, now ideally it would be touching here, but it's wedged in there good and solid. Now if you can pick it up and it not fall apart, you've really done a good job. Now a lot of times, I did this at the top so that there's very little hair. That's because this is going to be part of a shelter frame. Now if you want a sawhorse, you would make this notch a little bit lower so that these are taller. And ideally, you will mark the spot on where the bottom of the legs are and dig a hole and bury them. And this will be your permanent sawhorse. For like if you're going to stay somewhere for a week, you'll have a place for sawing firewood. Or some people have been known to make two of these and bury them and then line this with logs and then line it with pine boughs or some sort of evergreen foliage, and you can actually make a bed out of this off the ground. But what we're going to do is I'm going to make the ridge pole for it now, and I'm going to show you how the ridge pole locks in without having to bury the legs. Now sometimes it's kind of hard to envision these things, but for me, I like to give myself a center line which will be the bottom of the ridge pole. So let's just make a mark right here. Alright, now what we're going to do next is, if this is the bottom of the ridge pole, we are going to make a 45-degree mark. Let's see, we're going to go about 45 right here. So we need to turn this thing. That's going to be about 45 right there. Remember, Silky is a pull saw. Alright. And we're going to make a mark right here. Alright, now we're looking at this thing as the center line. Now this don't always work out. Sometimes you got to kind of carve it a little bit. So you're going to get rid of this piece. Alright, now I can already tell that I need to get a little bit more out of here. Alright, let's try that again. Let's beat this thing into here like this. You want a good stout machete for doing this. You don't want a thin grass and vine machete. I'm using the Condor Warlock. So now what you're going to do, flip this over so that you got your muscle memory. Alright, now you can eyeball this thing, and you got this notch, and that's not a good notch. So I'm going to have to turn this to where I think it's 45. I'm just going to have to eyeball it this way. And you'll want to saw the same way right here. The idea is for this to lock in to the top. Doesn't have to be huge, it just has to lock in. See, my center line is over a little, which didn't work out. Sometimes these things don't work out. This is the perfect way to ruin a silky saw. You have to have diligence and know that you're doing the pull cut only. Alright, so let's try to beat this blade in here one more time. That ought to be enough of a notch right there. So now let's stand this up and take a look at it. Alright, let's see if we can stand this up and get it assembled, and I'll bring the camera in a little closer and show you the notch. So you want to lift up just like that. You want this thing to be 90 degrees, and you want this to sit right in there. Alright, we're going to have to cut way more off this side. Now as you'll see here, this notch is perfect, or close to. I could angle this corner back up a little bit right here, which I'll do. Now this one is terrible because it's way off, so I'm going to have to cut all the way up here so that it'll fit in. So we're going to do that next. Alright, now if you cut too much off one side, it ain't that big of a deal as long as the other one is a nice tight fit. So, and I never do these things offset to begin with because I've done them backwards so many times and made them to where they were both loose, which you don't want. Wait a minute, that'd be better to do it this way. There you go. There you go. Alright, now if I remember right, the back quadrant here needed some off. So we're going to take care of that now. Alright. There we go. Now that thing should fit like a glove this time. We're fitting a lot better because this thing fits right up in here, but we want this to sit deeper. So right in here, what we're going to do, right here, is we're going to carve a little bit of a radius. So I'm going to lift it up, flip it over. We'll carve in just a little bit here. See. Oh yeah, that made this drop down a lot more. Alright. That is spectacular. See, they ain't gonna go nowhere. Alright, now at this point, if this was a survival situation for those kind of guys that are like, oh, I only go out with a machete and a saw, or, you know, if it really is a survival type situation, the next thing up is cut a bunch of greenery, a bunch of pine boughs, or just any kind of evergreen boughs, and throw them on the ground, and then start laying them up across the top. Alright, but I am not killing a bunch of green trees just for a video. So what we're going to do is we are going to deck it out with a tarp and a floor and a bug net. Alright. Alright, so you want to put in some kind of a floor to protect yourself from the ground and to protect your airbed. This is a good floor because it's quilted, black on one side, reflective on the other side. During the winter, you can put it in reflective side up. Well, actually, to keep it clean, we'll just do it that way. Alright, next up, you're going to put in a bug net. You know something? That's going to blind the camera. Let's turn that over. Let's throw a bug net over the front. Oh, one other thing. You want to carve these little notches off the top here. To keep from poking a hole in things. Or you can take your ground cover, or we'll use this. You can lay this over the top. Lay that bag over top. It'll also help protect your tarp. Now, if you thought it wasn't going to rain, you could sleep in it like that with a bug net over it. But we're going to put a tarp over it. Now, with a tarp, the bigger the tarp, this is something that I often try to explain to people. If you have a shelter and you put a tarp that fits that shelter, the rain is going to hit all the way around it and the chances of it running under is greater. But if you put a giant tarp that the sides spread out, you're keeping the rain further away from the potential to get into your tarp shelter. So, use as big a tarp as you can find. I think this is a 9x11. Now at this point, going with the no cordage, no tent stakes, all you got to do now is just find some extra sticks and logs and branches and just lay them all over it, maybe even lay them up against it. That way it won't lift up with the wind or blow away. Now you can see how far out it goes. If the rain hit the tarp, a small tarp, it could roll down and go right under, but as big as that is, it's keeping it away from it. So, isn't that cool? Alright, so that's it. The butterfly notch. Like I say, it ain't just for shelters. It can be a cross for a sawhorse for firewood. It can be a part of your structure for hanging a pot over the fire. Or if you really want to spend the time, you can make 2 of these, bury them in the ground, and turn it into a bed. And if you got a good enough eye, I know it's not very bushcrafty, but you might could bring a protractor and a magic marker with you. And you could make these things, instead of being at a 45, you can tilt them down to about a 60 and build them. And they would be really strong then, and that's how you make a bed, because it's got a slight V shape to it. But anyway, get out, practice your notches, I've shown several notches in the past, but I never showed a butterfly notch because I thought it was common knowledge. But when I got to looking around, there wasn't that many videos on it. And a lot of people just do a butterfly notch to be doing it. They don't actually beat them together and use them for something. But this is the use for it. So get out, enjoy life, do your bushcrafting, practice, be a master of knots, and we shall. See you in the next one. Nice and cozy.